Is God real? Well, there could be some things that an apologist could do to prove it, but obviously that won't happen here. This is just a laundry list of bad reasons to think God is real. Let's get started. This time, I take a look at a small channel from Dominique where he tries to tell us that God is real, all the while not doing a thing to prove it. But this is typical for the religious apologist who's really only concerned with his own feelings, not with the facts. So let's see where John goes completely wrong as he tries to explain why God is real.
What's up, guys? It's Dominique, the Soul Proponent, and today I just want to talk a little bit about my experience of telling another individual about what I've learned through my spiritual awakening.
Hey, John. Now, this could be interesting because it gives us some insight into why people believe what they believe and how they rationalize personal experiences into those beliefs, whether those experiences are demonstrable or not. And I've talked about this before. The fact that people tend not to think too critically about their experiences or question what happened or how it happened or what rationalization they impose on their experiences to try to fit them into their pre-existing mental framework. So let's see how this goes.
And this individual was pretty much a traditional Christian. And when I started to tell him about what I went through and how similar they were to the stories in the Bible of Jesus healing people and the miracles he did, he was like, whoa, that sounds like it might be real. That sounds like it's probably true.
Well, that sounds like confirmation bias. You have someone who is already predisposed to believe this stuff being faced with a story that they can shove into their headspace that confirms what they already believe is true. That's why so many of these stories are swallowed uncritically, both on the side of the believer and on the side of the experiencer. It feels good to accept it. It gets that little feel-good chemical hit in the brain. They want it to be true on some level. So because it hits all of those checkboxes, they think it's got to be true. But that's not how rational people operate.
I'm like, well, duh, of course, God is real.
So you say. That doesn't make God real. And this is the real difference between skeptics, people who actually care what is real and what is not, who care what is defensible and what is not, and the true believers, people who have a vested emotional interest in maintaining existing beliefs, whether there's any good reason to think that they're true or not. The basic ideas are set in stone. God is real, no proof required. It's just obvious to them, not because they have intellectually determined that it's true, but because it makes them feel good to think that it's true. Again, this is not how rational people operate.
I mentioned to him things like, when Jesus turned the water into wine, how that's actually a metaphor or symbolism for the emptiness that we experience when we let go of our beliefs, that emptiness actually turning into a fullness, into an immaculate presence and a divinity.
All of which, let's be honest, you pulled straight out of your ass. It just goes to show the amazing power of human rationalization when you stop being concerned with the facts and go full bore on blind faith. Because there's no reason whatsoever to take anything he said seriously at all. It just assumes that there's anything worthwhile behind a story about Jesus, and then he goes on to tell us what it all means, without any indication that it means what he wants it to mean. And we're supposed to be impressed by that. Why?
And then I mentioned to him about the miracle of Jesus when he healed the man across the lake with all the demons. And I told him, the soul is just like that. It clears the mind. It scatters the voices in the head. And, that the legion of voices in our head is gone. And all that's left is presence, openness, and clarity.
More ad hoc rationalization based on myths in a primitive book. Now, I'm not trying to make fun of this guy because he's certainly not alone in any of this. I see it all the time. That's why there are more than 42,000 distinct sects of Christianity, because everyone has their own take on what the Bible says and what the Bible means, but none of them can show that their interpretations are actually correct. But they sure present it as such, don't they?
And then, I also mentioned to him about the woman that went to the fringe of his robe saying, if I can only touch his hem, I will be healed. And I told him, like, that was me, because all I had to do was get close to this part of myself and I was healed from an unconscious lack of self-worth.
Which really has nothing to do with Christianity, does it? You're just making associations that aren't really there because it provides emotional comfort. Oh yeah, it's kind of like this story in this ancient book of mythology. Therefore that book has to be true because I can see parallels in my own life, very vague parallels at that, and it makes me feel good.
And I can tell in his heart he knew that there was something there, and he was like, wow.
Because he's desperately looking for a reason to continue to believe, just like you are. It's the whole reason apologetics exists. As I've said before, apologetics has nothing at all to do with convincing unbelievers that the claims of religion are true. It exists to convince and reinforce the people who already believe that they're not believing in vain. And unfortunately, once you step back and evaluate the claims rationally and skeptically, they simply do not stand up to any kind of intellectual evaluation. It's the same reason parents tell their kids that, well, of course Santa Claus is real. Of course the Easter Bunny is going to hide eggs and bring you candy. They are provided for emotional comfort, not because they're true, because in reality, they're just not true.
I just like to share this information with people because it lets them know that, yeah, God is real.
No evidence provided, and I'm sure John here hasn't even given that a second thought.
And it gives them a little bit more to think about, like, well, maybe it's not as literal as I thought it was. And I don't expect anyone to just take my word for it. And I'm like, well, no, you need to go find out for yourself.
Religion really frowns on that. Take it from someone who knows from personal experience. Religion doesn't want you to go outside of the religion or to research the precepts of the religion itself. They want you to listen and believe. Trying to think for yourself outside of a very, very tiny window is simply not acceptable. You just might learn that religion is a load of bunk that way and stop handing over your hard-earned money to the church, and they can't have that, can they?
But this is what I experienced, and I think it's helpful for people to know that what I went through, they can actually go and find out for themselves if what I went through was real.
No, they probably can't. And I'll be honest, I don't have any details about what he supposedly went through, so I can really only speak in general terms. But having spoken to thousands of theists over the years who have made claims about experiencing God, none of those claims actually stand up to any rational scrutiny. They just insert God into their experience without having any reason to think God was responsible or God exists or anything else. It's like saying that God found your car keys. Says who? You found your car keys. You just can't show that God had anything to do with it. But it makes you feel good to think that the all-powerful creator of the universe took some time out of his busy schedule to point you to the cushions in the couch. And somehow, this impresses people.
And they might even have better experiences than I did, but it's all here basically to give you an idea and to know for a fact that God is real.
Except it doesn't work that way. Unsupported claims about unevidenced deities won't convince anyone except the particularly gullible who already want to believe that it's true. Not only is this confirmation bias, but it's social confirmation. People wandering around telling everyone on their side of the aisle how right they are. And we see this all over the place. People on the far political left spend a lot of time offering up anecdotes that show that their preconceived notions are true, so that they already converted will keep believing and feeling good about the things they believe. They don't pass along stories that prove that their ideas are wrong. They ignore those. They're only trying to keep the blind faith train rolling, just like the religious.
The scriptures are real.
The Bible is real. That doesn't mean that anything written in the Bible actually happened, especially the supernatural passages that cannot be independently confirmed in any way, shape, or form.
It's not literal, but it is real.
So you say. And when you get right down to it, that's all anyone can do. Claim it's real. Claim it's true. Claim that their own personal interpretation of the book must be correct because it makes them feel really, really good to think that it is. I'm not sure why that's supposed to impress anyone.
And that's kind of the thing I've been trying to stress, really, that the basic bottom line to the gospel message is true, but it's just not literal. John Dominique, the sole proponent. Peace.
Again, I'm not trying to go after this guy. I'm just pointing out that what he thinks is true, what he claims is true, isn't independently or objectively verifiable as true. And I'm sure he couldn't care less because the religious mindset, the irrational mindset, is that truth and fact aren't important. It's how the belief makes you feel that counts. But when you start to examine that sentiment intellectually, it all falls apart. It doesn't matter if gravity is real or not. It only matters how my beliefs in gravity make me feel. Who cares if the earth is a sphere? It's only my feelings that matter. Hey, it doesn't matter if I look both ways before crossing the street. Only my emotions count. Sure, right up until you get splattered by an oncoming semi, because your emotions really don't matter when it comes to the objective reality that we all share. Whether God exists or not is a matter for science to work out, not feelings. And you can make up all the excuses that you want, you can invent all of the characteristics for God that you want, but it's not actually true unless it's actually true. And we only have one means at present that can demonstrate that anything is actually true, that method being science. But the religious tell us that their God can never be discovered rationally, while at the same time telling us all about this God that they can show no means of having actually intellectually uncovered, and they don't want to be laughed at because it hurts their feelings. There's something seriously wrong here, and nobody wants to talk about it.